Hey there, Jen here. Had a little hiccup there. Was about to get frustrated, but patience is a good thing to have. Hang on a sec while I pull up what we're gonna be looking at today, or you're gonna mostly probably be listening to. Give me 1 second, and we're gonna take a look and a listen to this. There we go. Let me make sure it's over there for you. All right, so greetings and salutations. Mollification is a funny thing. You think you have things handled or you think you're doing well, and that's the problem. You think, "Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing well." And that, my friends, is spiritual pride. I I did the same thing myself, obviously, or I wouldn't be talking about it, I guess. I thought that I was doing well. I thought things were going well until I wasn't, and again, and nothing horrendous or anything, just bad for me for where I'm at now. And so I was repenting and I was fasting and things like that. And I just want to say, nothing is ever impossible in this place, in this realm, in this reality. And yes, I do lead into things a little bit. It's funny how somebody was watching for a few seconds there and already decided that they had heard enough and were going to tune out. And I think that's a big problem with all of us today is our lack of attention span and our inability to actively listen to other people. um, it's been a crushing year or two for me at this point. I had thought God was going to rebuild my life, like all these Christians talk about, all these good things happening to them, all these blessings that they receive, and that hasn't been the way for me. Um, but granted, now I had a fall from grace, so it wouldn't be that way for me. My story thus far is a cautionary story. But I've always said that when reading scripture or anything that is, how do I put this without being offensive to today's modern culture? Anything that is written with some semblance of emotional intelligence um has dual meanings. It has more than one surface level interpretation. And so I've always said that scripture is also a book of life. It should be our own evolution from thinking all things are carnal. It's about how we dress, it's about how we walk, about how we talk. And then as we begin to age into adolescence and on, learn that things are more important of, the fruits that you bear. Are you kind? Are you patient? Are you giving? Are you compassionate? Are you generous, charitable? These things. And so Revelation would then act as a book of one's own assumption, or AKA death translation, or ascension, if you want to look at it that way, and resurrection. Because the Christ story, I believe, is supposed to be everyone's story. It is supposed to be something that we are able to achieve as well. Even the Catholic Church doesn't talk about this a lot, but it's called theosis, union with God, to where your thoughts are God's thoughts and God's thoughts are your thoughts. And in that way, you do have God within you and you are a piece of God at the same time. That's why Christ said, if you reject the Father, you reject me, because the Father is in me and I am in him. Um, I have, I guess, rare belief that we're all expected to get to those points in our walk, in our life. And I think it happens. And I think this might be why we're dealing with some of this time dilation. And again, I think God makes use of everything. Satan, Saturn, is the orchestrator of time. And when you think about it, that time is truly what most people here worship. They worship time, the clock. We punch the clock. From the time we're little, we're indoctrinated. Okay, when that bell rings, get up from this chair and go to the other chair. When that bell rings, go from this room to that room. Walk in a single file. Don't leave the rest of the group. Be like everyone else. God, the creator God, is orderly, but he is He's not a tyrant. And that's what most people miss out on when reading scripture is they take it at face value. Oh, well, this person that calls themselves God is not very kind. Not everybody was talking to the creator God, and that should be evident to true believers, because Christ said, you are of your father the devil until you're grafted over, until you turn around and walk the other way, change your mind. Thus, when you change your mind, you change your words, and when you change your words, you change your actions. So when you're able to change your mind, it helps you to make changes. And if we read a self-help book, everyone agrees, there are classes and seminars given on these self-help books that make the rounds, and people make millions of dollars off of it. But because the Bible is what it is, because there's uncomfortable human history in there, people balk at it and they blame God instead of looking within and saying, hey, I got to stop offending the creator maker God and start acting like I have a piece of God within me. Okay, so now that I've kind of led into my own personal segue into this, and I can only talk from my own testimony. I don't want to tell your story for you. That's your um blessing to do for yourself. Now, I also, in saying that the book of Revelation could be then everybody's story of their quote unquote death transition, then Revelation would also be tribulation, would be a hard time that all of us have in our life. David had one, Solomon had them. Um, and I'm coming up on 7 years here. 7 years. So yeah, I am just in my own personal tribulation. I think we have more power here than they say. I think that we are allowed to change things. We are co-creators, but God has the final say. Now, I read that from his exegesis, Philip K. Dick's exegesis. This is an appetizer. This is an hors d'oeuvre. We're going to dip our toes into this first because this talks about the topic at hand. And then for years after these events happen, um, this man does nothing but write about it every day because he can't figure it out. And that's kind of, I've looked for every day, I've looked for things and looked for things, trying to find, and I've punched in random things, right? Like, don't think I've done the same search over and over and over. Now, I do go back to certain searches, but I change the words that I use. I change what I'm looking for because obviously what I was looking for maybe wasn't working. Now, if AI has always been here, like some of us suspect at this point, does that mean AI has always been creating and making changes? Maybe all of this stuff just populated because I did not hear about this when I read a preview of the exegesis on this channel at the beginning when I started this, when I moved everything, well, not moved everything over, but moved my streaming and everything over to this channel. We did a brief look at a preview of his exegesis. His exegesis is him writing every single day. It's basically kind of like a diary, a journal. And he writes in it like what he did. There are letters that they put in there too in the first part of it. Um, it's just notes. Some of it's just notes that friends of his had put together after he had passed away. And again, I always tell you when we read these things, look for the red flags, look for the breadcrumbs. I will point them out as we go. But there are two stories being told here. The one at face value that he's telling you, and then another one with hidden clues that I don't know if he knows he's giving them to us. I would like to say he doesn't know that it is all the Holy Spirit, but I think some of what he's giving us veiled. You see, in our reality, artists, and I mean any type of artist, the written artist is the author, right? He's an artist with words. The visual artist is a painter or a sculptor, right? Um, the virtual artist is a playwright or somebody who's in a play, right? An actor. And comedians. Entertainers always have more leeway when giving truth to an audience because they can always say, well, it's a part of the play. It's a part of the movie. Why are you making a fuss? Thou doth protest too much. You're making such a fuss. There must be some truth here. So keep these things in mind and keep the that he's writing about in mind. Once again, we are brought back to the Nazis and what if they were the ones who won the war? All of these topics that I have been delving into all on my own with like no one to guide me other than the Holy Spirit. I'm being given like the exact I don't know. It's wild. Now again, you could say, well, you're lying, or it's AI feeding you what you want to hear. It's feeding your bias. Okay, let's say that some part of that is true. That's why when we do research with me together, we do it together. And that's why I don't usually use results from the first page. And that's why I use two different search engines, one on my phone and one on the laptop, just to not contaminate the experiment that I'm running on my own reality. Okay, now I've given you enough of an intro. I don't want people to go away angry. So I'm going to delve into this here. But remember, he is giving us breadcrumbs too that I will point out. But again, this is going to get weird for me because these are all topics that I've spoken of over the last 7 years on my first channel and this channel. That's weird. If I was one of the witnesses, I just made myself two witnesses by having two channels. That's funny. Remember, I also said the Bible story is in every story, and I explained this. I did a video on The Little Mermaid, and I did a video on Pinocchio on how the biblical story is being told in every story. I don't know if people are intending it, but it's happening. And I'm seeing it in my own life. Not saying I am Christ, right? But we all are. We are each in our own hero's journey. Our own individual realities are shared then we have one giant shared reality, right? We each have our own home, but we have a big home we share here, which is Earth. Okay? We each have our own reality home, the eyes we see through, the thoughts that we think, the internal dialogue that we should have, which are the thoughts that you think, that's internal dialogue. So let's check this out, and this is going to get weird. How to Build a Universe That Doesn't Fall Apart 2 days Later. This is an essay Philip K. Dick wrote in 1978. Now, in the last stream, I touched on the fact, we looked into a little bit, the fact that he has a theory, and he has a lot of theories, that we could possibly be stuck in time in the year 50 AD, and that Satan has his false reality, his false matrix, right over top of the Bible. And that we're still here because Christ is almost ready, almost going to come back. And this is happening. And he doesn't say this part, but this is what I believe, but he hints at it. I believe it's because God's going to save everybody. And I know people are going to say, that's against the Bible. No, it's not. God's will is that every man shall be saved and that none shall perish. Now, I don't know about the fallen ones, right? Like, I don't know. But every time we think we have an idea in our head, the universe, God, proves that we don't know what jack. We know not what we think we know. So it's good to keep an open mind. The Bible says God's will is that every man shall be saved. And I think that this is how he filters out souls, that he just waits. He has all the time in the world because he's outside of time. God isn't in time. We're stuck in time. Saturn, Satan, is the father of the clock, of the hours. Maybe not the days and the months and the years. Well, that's again two different calendars. We have the Gregorian calendar and then the Julian calendar, right? So, but the way we count days and hours in the day and birthdays, I don't think we're supposed to be doing that. And I think I'll go one further. This is going to sound really wild, but again, it'll lead into all this. I don't think we have to die our age because Christ died for us. Like, if you had enough faith, you would know that it was finished. He did it. Or you have to go down a negative road of all these bad possibilities. Now, I believe God is the God of the impossible. I believe that anything is possible here, but not any bad thing. I'm actually starting to believe that a certain accusation comes from the pit of hell and that it's a deception. And that by calling it a deception, people are going to want to do me harm because they're going to hate me more than the people that they think do certain things by calling it a lie. Are you calling my child a liar? Yeah, actually, I kind of am. Because I know how I've been done in my life, and I know it's a pattern for our society, and I'm seeing it all over, and I think it's a deception. And I think the actual witches that are out there, it wasn't satanic panic, it's a real thing. And we're going to look at a darker document in a few days that relates to satanic panic. And I got a hold of some FOIA papers that show how they trained cops in the occult so they would know what to look for. But don't you get it? When you bring awareness like that, you're indoctrinating a person. That's exactly why Christ said to keep your mind on heavenly things, because there are certain things we're not even supposed to be talking about. And I think you know what I'm talking about. The Epstein things, you see how mad that makes people? Obviously, because it's child harming, because it's very bad, very wicked. And what's more wicked is that it might just be a lie to corrupt our minds and to turn us against each other. Think about it. Are you any better because you're aware of that? Or did it corrupt your mind? You can't erase it now about people talking about grooming and other topics. Do you see what I mean? And I know the people who've told me about that topic, it's followed me. Everybody, for some reason, wants me to believe that that's a thing. Oh, this person did this and this, like that's all anyone talks about. There's something wrong when we are that focused on things of a carnal nature relating to our temples in any respect. The things that have become public discourse, those should not be permittable and possible. Because awareness sometimes is the spiritual virus and things are spiritually. Now, mind me, I'm not a doctor here. I'm talking about reality. This is a spiritual contagion, and we're passing it by our words. And I'm going to prove it to you. And I've been trying to prove it ever since I moved things over to this channel. I'm going to prove to you that we write our own reality. Not everybody, because again, not everything's permittable. God allows Dean Koontz to be a prophet. His books have hope. You can tell he's a believer in God. Stephen King, his books are not allowed to become prophecy. Why? Because they're dark and wicked. And most of them have that topic in it. So pay attention to what you're thinking about, because just even if you're the one out there allegedly catching people who harm kids, do you realize you have to entrap somebody into doing that? You have to pretend that you're not that age. Do you see that whole thing? Do you see how that works? How we're creating the demand for certain things? We're indoctrinating people by bringing their awareness to it, like that's a good thing. Stop talking about it, it'll stop happening. It won't enter people's minds. Now we got whole generations of people that's all they think about now. You've got the Pride Parade that's all people talk about is their plumbing. Why are we so focused on what's under everybody's clothes? Seriously. Why do we care so much? Why do I care? I'm not going to know who's using the bathroom. There's partitions. You're not going to tell me. I'm not going to ask you. Like, I just don't know why certain arguments, they're bringing them up just to corrupt our minds. Because writers or people who write, which is the whole world now, can become prophetic. And that's why you're seeing the chaos you're seeing today. And I have to laugh is because we literally are kind of doing it to ourselves. It's the things that we're passing through our words. Now, let me get to an expert on all this before I bore you. Nobody wants to hear me talk. Let's hear one of the experts on science fiction and reality, Philip K. Dick. This is an essay he did. And if you appreciate the content, I would appreciate the thumbs up. Lets me know that I have something other than bots on the channel. Seriously. Please have a conversation. Please talk amongst yourselves. I try to get over there to the chat. But when I'm doing a reading like this, I don't want to waste any more of your time. I know I get wordy. But again, my videos are like that. We're building here. We're building on our attention spans. We're building on our vocabulary. We're building on our knowledge base. And we're building on, hopefully, stone, rock, a strong foundation. We are unindoctrinating ourselves from everything the world is doing or talking about. Guess what, guys? Politics, that's a religion too. I try not to like delve in there because it's just not something I'm that interested in. But everybody wants to bring politics into religion because politics is a religion. It legit is. All right. And you have some people that know this secret, and I will prove that to you as well because I found an article last night or a link. What do we say today? A link. I found a link. My mom always said, I read an article. My dad hated that. I'm sorry. He'd be like, read a book, read the whole book. Anyways, How to Build a Universe That Doesn't Fall Apart 2 Days Later by Philip K. Dick, 1978. Now, this gets weird because he starts with Disneyland, and you guys know I think there's something going on with that whole charade of Disneyland and the stories, how they all have the biblical story, and there's something very strange with their androids. And yes, yes, I've been looking into it, but I can't find a thing. Anyways, here we go. First, now this is weird because watch what he says by Paris TV. Check this out. Again, I think he's trying to tell us things. And this also points to the fact that America isn't what you think it is. And I think it's possible he's trying to tell us that as well. This is wild how God led me to this because the first time I was looking into him, I did just a cursory thing and I did not come across this and this. And I didn't come across most of his short stories. First, before I begin to bore you with the usual sort of things science fiction writers say in speeches, let me bring you the official greetings from Disneyland. I consider myself a spokesperson for Disneyland because I live just a few miles from it. And as if that were not enough, I once had the honor of being interviewed there by Paris TV. So is he in Disneyland in Paris? Does he live in Paris? Do they have a Disneyland? Didn't they used to have a Disneyland? For several weeks after the interview, I was really ill and confined to bed. Now pay attention here too, because quantum immortality, it's possible the dude died or whatever is happening to people. I think it was the whirling teacups that did it. Elizabeth Antaby, who was the producer of the film, wanted to have me whirling around in one of the giant teacups while discussing the rise of fascism with Norman Spinard. Now, he's going to name drop here. I'm not going to dwell on these parts. I'll just interject where I feel like it's integral to what we're trying to pick out here. But again, this is going to act as an intro to something bigger. An old friend of mine who writes excellent science fiction, we discussed Watergate, but we did that on the deck of Captain Hook's pirate ship. Little children wearing Mickey Mouse hats, those black hats with the ears, kept running up and bumping against us as the cameras whirred away and Elizabeth asked unexpected questions. Norman and I, being preoccupied with tossing little children about, said some extraordinarily stupid things that day. Today, however, I will have to accept full blame for what I tell you, since none of you are wearing Mickey Mouse hats and trying to climb up on me under the impression that I am part of the rigging of a pirate ship. That's funny. What else is funny too is if you've seen The Mouth of Madness, that's happening in real life with Philip K. Dick and Dean Koontz. So far, they're the only two I've come across, and the Bible, of course. They're the only ones I've come across. But we know that some movies seems to be happening with some movies too. But I didn't know that he was also the one who wrote the short story for the Adjustment Bureau, which is about these little beings like angels or whatever you want to call them. They're men in black, I think, in the Adjustment Bureau, and they go around and they do things. And I think men in black might be angels just because they're different than us. I mean, most of us don't understand angels anyway. Regardless, I don't even know what I was gonna say there. Hang on. Um, wow, sorry, brain fart. I get distracted getting to looking at my dog and the material here because I'm trying to think about how I'm going to tie this in already with the next topic or the next thing because there's a lot here that he gives us. Now, Philip K. Dick, Dean Koontz, right? Because Dean Koontz, it started with him in the Wuhan, and that seemed to be like a book that was coming to life. That is also a story in the Never-Ending Story. It's also the biblical story. Now, if we talk about the Mandela effect into all of these things, um, the Mandela effect also, geez, do you see what happens? I think, and I'm very serious about this, and I think Philip Dick caught on to that too. When you start catching these things, when you start catching up to them, it's almost like as soon as you try to talk about it, it's taken out of your head. Like the people who see UFOs and Bigfoot and they don't know why, but they don't talk about it for years and years. Kind of like that. Like the second you try to reveal something or you know? So I don't know if that's the Holy Spirit saying it doesn't need to be revealed yet or what, but I'll continue on. Dean Koontz with Wuhan and The Neverending Story and the Bible. And I started to wonder, I've thought that before about the Mandela effect. Is that something that happens when someone starts reading the Bible on their own and because it's alive, like the never-ending story, the book starts changing? But would you even I don't know. That's a weird. See, that one's like a paradox to me. Maybe that's why the thought was there and then it wasn't, because it's almost when you think along paradoxical lines, it can be hard to trace, even though it's circular reasoning. It can be hard to because you get lost. You're like, wait, is that possible? Okay, so science fiction writers, I'm sorry to say, really do not know anything. We can't talk about science because our knowledge of it is limited and unofficial, and usually our fiction is dreadful. A few years ago, no college or university would ever have considered inviting one of us to speak. We were mercifully confined to lurid pulp magazines, impressing no one. In those days, friends would say to me, but are you writing anything serious? Meaning, are you writing anything other than science fiction? We longed to be accepted. We yearned to be noticed. Then suddenly the academic world noticed us. We were invited to give speeches and appear on panels, and immediately we made idiots of ourselves. The problem is simply this: what does a science fiction writer know about? On what topic is he an authority? And again, so if Philip K. Dick is one of the prophetic writers, he keeps pointing to Disneyland and the fact that he lived very near there. I think that's funny because that's like that's a whole new cult right now. Like everybody's obsessed with Disneyland. Are we in a Philip K. book? Is this like the Mouth of Madness? Are we at the mercy of the authors? Because the pen is truly mightier than the sword. So suppose, oh, I don't know, King James got his friend Shakespeare and said, hey, we need to change some of this so that it doesn't say this group of people wins or that group of people wins, but it says this group of people gets decimated or exiled or has really, really bad things happen to them because they know how powerful our minds are. And gee, if we put this book into every hotel and every house across the land, well, then surely there will be someone in those households that will believe these things and they will make these things start to happen. Because perhaps, again, the elites already know these secrets that our minds and our belief are what, in part, help to create our reality. And by reality, I mean events. I'm not talking about people, all right? Like I don't know, unless, that's the reason we have so many background people right now is because people are creating people too. Gee, guys, thanks for the thumbs up. We're having a conversation here. You're making me feel lovely. I'm glad I give hours a week. And I'm not trying to sound ungrateful. I mean, I'm here trying to do, trying to have fellowship, trying to hang out, trying to get to know people, trying to make friends. My channel gets hidden. And the people that do watch don't seem to want to be here. So yeah, I don't get it. It's like their job to sit here and watch my channel so it looks like I have someone tuning in. All right. It reminds me of a headline that appeared in a California newspaper just before I flew here. Scientists say that mice cannot be made to look like human beings. Oh my gosh, dude, it sounds like today. It was a federally funded research program, I suppose. Just think, someone in this world is an authority on the topic of whether mice can or cannot put on two-tone shoes, derby hats, pinstripe shirts, and Dacron pants and pass as humans. That's funny. Well, I tell you what interests me, what I consider important. I can't claim to be an authority on anything, but I can honestly say that certain matters absolutely fascinate me and that I write about them all the time. The two basic topics which fascinate me are what is reality and what constitutes the authentic human being. Over the 27 years in which I have published novels and stories, I have investigated these two interrelated topics over and over again. I consider them important topics. What are we? What is it which surrounds us that we call the not me or the empirical or phenomenal world? In 1951, when I sold my first story, I had no idea that such fundamental issues could be pursued in the science fiction field. I began to pursue them unconsciously. My first story had to do with a dog who imagined that the garbage men who came every Friday morning were stealing valuable food. Okay, this is funny. His first story had to do with a dog who imagined that the garbage men who came every Friday morning were stealing valuable food, which the family had carefully stored away in a safe metal container. Every day, members of the family carried out paper sacks of nice ripe food, stuffed them into the metal container, shut the lid tightly, and when the container was full, these dreadful looking creatures came and stole everything but the can. That is great. Finally, in the story, the dog begins to imagine that someday the garbage men will eat the people in the house as well as stealing their food. Of course, the dog is wrong about this. Now, I love how he uses this as a prime example to show how perspective can change everything. Of course, the dog is wrong about this. We all know that garbage men do not eat people, but the dog's extrapolation was, in a sense, logical. Given the facts at his disposal, the story was about a real dog, and I used to watch him and try to get inside his head and imagine how he saw the world. Certainly, I decided that dog sees the world quite differently than I do or any humans do. And then I began to think maybe each human being lives in a unique world, in a private world, a world different from those inhabited and experienced by all other humans. And that led me to wonder if reality differs from person to person. Can we speak of reality singular, or shouldn't we really be talking about plural realities? And if there are plural realities, are some more true, more real than others? What about the world of a schizophrenic? Maybe it's as real as our world. Maybe we cannot say that we are in touch with reality and he is not, but should instead say, his reality is so different from ours that he can't explain his to us and we can't explain ours to him. The problem then is that if subjective worlds are experienced too differently, there occurs a breakdown of communication. And there is the real illness. And that's the problem too, is if we're sitting here and we're corrupting ourselves, if we are the ones who create the reality here, and all we're talking about is child harmers, what do you think we're creating by talking about that? It's simple supply and demand. It's simple economics. Stop talking about that trash. Everyone, I'm not, this has nothing to do with whether there are victims out there who need help and whether justice needs to be served. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying it does not need to be a part of public discourse, nor does it need to be talked about over the dinner table, nor should you just approach anyone about it. I think we've been seriously misled, and they are having us harm ourselves because they don't have the legal grounds to do that. They don't have the legal grounds to do it. So they have to get a that's why even the mainstream media push certain ideas and ideals. I'm not saying the book of Revelation isn't true. I'm just saying it's not all literal. And these people that make it all physical don't understand the book to begin with. People like that shouldn't be able to read. You shouldn't know how to read. Seriously. If you are going to mislead that many people, especially if our minds are this powerful, because we're also going to take a look at all of the books Hitler wanted to burn. I want to know what books he wanted gone, and I want to know why. Were they good, wholesome books? That would be a good background for our reality here. I think you know what I mean by background. I think I've talked about that enough. The part of the matrix that is just like window dressing props. We got to stop. We got to get our minds out of the gutter as a collective. It has to start. Because again, look at the people who are talking about that. Look at the fruits in their own life. Look at what's going on with them. Look at their history. Look at the people they surround themselves with. It is okay to look at someone and say, you're a liar. You're lying. Because that is much better than allowing a false accusation to end somebody else's life. And there's a lot of children out here who are mad at their parents because their parents didn't let them do whatever they wanted when they were little. I know. I'm being bullied by a group of them. Every time this kid, and he's like twice my size, 17, has is loaded apparently because they got plenty of vehicles. And every time he comes up around my corner, he almost hit me going to the mailbox yesterday. Tell my husband, not a word to say, nothing. I said, "Oh, you're being run by the village of the damned, huh? The kids own you." It's obvious. And again, some people knew this. They knew that things they wrote would begin to happen. Before we moved here, right when things were popping off, he was burning a lot of stuff outside. I'm like, what are you burning? What are you burning? And for a long time, I felt, man, I'm not myself. Something else is controlling me because I would have never behaved like that. I would have never done that. And gee, I didn't even say anything when that happened. Like, how could I not sit there and not say anything? Can somebody, if you don't claim your free will, or if you're in a marriage and somebody else is the head of you, can somebody else just using your name and writing a story about you make it happen? Can you writing down that I hit the lottery today, writing down the date, but it's a future date that hasn't happened yet? Do you think it'll happen if you do it? Try it. Get yourself black ink. Okay, I'm giving you an experiment. You experiment on your reality because I've been doing it 7 years for everybody else and I'm tired. Get yourself a black pen right now if you want. and put on it at the top of the page, like we were all taught as children to write the date, but write tomorrow's date. Write 6/18/2025. Today, the most magnificent thing happened to me, and then put a comma and write your name. And put, at this address, at this time, I bought the winning lottery ticket. See if it happens for you. Now, granted, this is where you see who has power and who doesn't, because not everybody can win that lottery. See if it works. This is what we're talking about. So, again, if you appreciate how I try to tie these things together, because again, it all goes together. My whole channel's been building to this question. Are we able to write our own story? Or does it have to be written by another? Because we have free will, we have agency. This is why ask and you shall receive. God will give us what we ask for to an extent, as long as it's not messing with anyone else's free will. And as long as you're right with him. Now, if you're not right with him, he might give you something different. Or he might give you what you're asking for, knowing it's going to be bad for, well, not bad for you, knowing it's going to be a valuable lesson for you to never want that again. All right, he goes on to say, I once read a story about a man who was injured and taken to a hospital. When they began surgery on him, they discovered that he was an android, not a human, but that he did not know it. And again, in the beginning, he's talking about Disney, and now he's talking about androids. And again, I was just talking about all this stuff. And there's a movie like that on Netflix that I've told you guys to watch because it's creepy. That's why they keep forgetting and they keep resetting themselves, is they are the androids left over after the humans left. And they don't want to be androids. They want to have they want to be human. They want to have real families, and so they all reset their minds with this hypnosis machine every time they all start to remember. It's kind of sad. They had to break the news to him. Almost at once, Mr. Garson Poole discovered that his reality consisted of punched tape passing from reel to reel in his chest. Fascinated, he began to fill in some of the punched holes and add new ones. Immediately, his world changed. A flock of ducks flew through the room when he punched one new hole in the tape. Finally, he cut the tape entirely, whereupon the world disappeared. However, it also disappeared for the other characters in the story, which makes no sense if you think about it, unless the other characters were figments of his punched tape fantasy, which I guess they were. So there's he talking about NPCs, organic portals. Huh? Interesting. It was always my hope in writing novels and stories which ask the question, what is reality, to someday get an answer. This was the hope of most of my readers, too. Years passed. I wrote over 30 novels and over 100 stories, and still I could not figure out what was real. Now, I have to interject here as well and say this is the best definition I've ever seen for what reality is, or what is real. One day, a girl college student in Canada asked me to define reality for her. For a paper she was writing for her philosophy class, she wanted a one-sentence answer. I thought about it and finally said, reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. That's all I could come up with. That was back in 1972. Since then, I haven't been able to define reality any more lucidly. Is that what we are? Like, we're not in the Bible, are we? Who are all we then? God didn't write every one of us. Aha, but there's a book of life, isn't there? How could we all fit in a book of life, you guys? Well, we couldn't in a regular book if there was as many of us as they say there is, but there might not be. But if you had a tablet or a laptop, that kind of book, a notebook, an electric notebook, a digital notebook, in one of those you could. I don't think any libraries ever burned down either. I think, again, that's something That's arson. So when you burn history books, you so let's take this theory a little further. Let's say that Hitler wanted to burn the books, certain books, because they were mucking up reality too much, like we have today, for example. There are stories running in the background everywhere, in my opinion. And we've seen it, like I said, with Wuhan and Dean Koontz. Dean Koontz also wrote The Whisper Room, which is all about targeted individuals in the government and other agencies tracking people for one reason or another. Everybody's tracking everybody. 1984, that has come to fruition by Orwell. So, what kind of books did he want to burn? Did he want to burn the books that had the wars in it, or did he want to burn the wholesome stuff that was in there? And what is so it's wow, dude. I think that's the best definition I've seen too, though. Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, like Santa Claus, right? Doesn't go away. Well, I mean, he's still here, but is he? Like, not really. You see what I mean? How things can look fake? But the problem is a real one, not a mere intellectual game, because today we live in a society in which spurious realities are manufactured by the media, by governments, by big corporations, by religious groups, political groups, and the electronic hardware exists by which to deliver these pseudo worlds right into the heads of the reader, the viewer, the listener. Sometimes when I watch my 11-year-old daughter watch TV, I wonder what she's being taught. The problem of miscuing, consider that. A TV program produced for adults is viewed by a small child. Half of what is said and done in the drama TV is probably misunderstood by the child. Maybe it's all misunderstood. And the thing is, just how authentic is the information, anyhow? Even if the child correctly understood it, what is the relationship between the average TV situation comedy to reality? What about the cop shows? Cars are continually swerving out of control, crashing, catching fire. The police are always good and they always win. Do not ignore that point. The police always win. What a lesson that is. You should not fight authority, and even if you do, you will lose. The message here is be passive and cooperate. If Officer Beretta asks you for information, give it to him because Officer Beretta is a good man and to be trusted. He loves you, and you should love him. So I ask in my writing, what is real? Because unceasingly we are bombarded with pseudo realities manufactured by very sophisticated people using their very sophisticated electronic mechanisms. I do not distrust their motives, I distrust their power. They have a lot of it, and it is an astonishing power, that of creating whole universes, universes of the mind. I ought to know I do the same thing. It's my job to create universes as the basis of one novel after another, and I have to build them in such a way that they do not fall apart 2 days later, or at least that is what my editors hope. However, will reveal a secret to you. I like to build universes which do fall apart. I like to see them come unglued, and I like to see how the characters in the novels cope with this problem. I have a secret love of chaos. Pay attention to that, because again, not everything we read should be trusted either, or accepted and received and believed as truth, because your mind is a powerful, powerful quantum computer. No, you're not electronic. Well, you kind of are, but anyways, moving on. Okay. He likes to see them come unglued and he likes chaos. There should be more of it. Do not believe, and I am dead serious when I say this, do not assume that order and stability are always good in a society or in a universe. The old, the ossified must give way to new life and the birth of new things before new things can be born. The old must perish. This is a dangerous realization because it tells us that we must eventually part with much of what is familiar to us, and that hurts. But that is part of the script of life. Unless we can psychologically accommodate change, we ourselves begin to die inwardly. What I am saying is that objects, customs, habits, and ways of life must perish so that the authentic human being can live. And it is the authentic human being who matters most, the viable, elastic organism which can bounce back, absorb, and deal with the new. I think this is what more of us need is writing that challenges us. The Bible has a lot of good advice. It has a lot of historical, factual information in there, and it uses words that we aren't familiar with today. And it encourages people to learn a new language. There's a reason that I always go back to scripture. It's not that I just want to have a religious life and a religious channel. It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with truth and getting back to a point where, like, I don't think we're supposed to go back to where we were. I think I'm one of the few people that thinks we quote unquote fell for a reason. Like we had to make our first mistake to make our first choice, like a child does, right? So to like instigate our free will. And most of my life, I allowed everybody else to make most of the decisions for me. My mother and father would probably disagree there. I was unruly and obstinate, but in the long run, I always did what I was told. I never really said no, not very often. But I think we need more of this. We need people to pay attention to a hour long video. We need to have more discourse. We need to have more conversation, and allow theological and philosophical debates and just discourse. Short little tidbits of content and little crumples of information in TikTok videos that leave you wanting more. That's a money grab. And you're worth more than money. You are worth more than money. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that in your life, but you are. And there are things in life much more valuable than that piece of paper, because that's really all it is. Now they've got all that symbolism and occult shapes on there for a reason. Those sigils are on there so that you think it's more valuable than it is, so that you believe it. But now that you heard that, maybe you won't. Okay, again, if you appreciate this discourse, I would appreciate a thumbs up for the channel. The channel isn't going to be monetized. It'll just let me know if the words and verbiage and vocabulary that I'm using is tracking with you guys, is hitting, because if it's not, I can change the words that I use. Like, that's not a big deal. I know a lot of them. Okay, of course I would say this because I live near Disneyland. Now he's saying this again, which again, we talk about how Disneyland is a big clue for how the world is set up itself, but I haven't figured out exactly how yet. And they are always adding new rides and destroying old ones. Disneyland is an evolving organism. For years, they had the Lincoln simulacrum. I always trip up on that one. I can say simulation, but simulacrum, there it is. Simulation, simulacrum. Like Lincoln himself was only a temporary form which matter and energy take and then lose. The same is true of each of us, like it or not. In the pre-Socratic Greek philosopher Parmenides taught that the only things that are real are things which never change. This is funny. And the pre-Socratic Greek philosopher Heraclitus taught that everything changes. If you superimpose their truths, you get this result. Nothing is real. There is a fascinating next step to this line of thinking. Parmenides could never have existed because he grew old and died and disappeared. So, according to his own philosophy, he did not exist. And Heraclitus may have been right. Let's not forget that. So, if I don't know, was right, then Parmenides did exist. And therefore, according to Heraclitus' philosophy, perhaps now he's just doing it on purpose. Perhaps P was right, since P fulfilled the conditions, the criteria by which H judged things real. Wow, that got convoluted really quickly. Sometimes he's like reading talk. It sounds like his essays and lectures can come off like listening to the White Rabbit himself or the Mad Hatter. But it's brilliant. I absolutely love it. I offer this merely to show that as soon as you think to ask what is ultimately real, You right away begin to talk nonsense. Oh, good. I'm glad it wasn't just me like losing my mind there. Zeno proved that motion was impossible. Actually, he only imagined that he had proved this. What he lacked was what technically is called the theory of limits. David Hume, the greatest skeptic of all time, once remarked that after a gathering of skeptics met to proclaim the veracity of skepticism as a philosophy, all of the members of the gathering nonetheless left by the door rather than the window. I see Hume's point. It was all just talk. The solemn philosophers weren't taking what they said seriously. But I consider that the matter of defining what is real, that is a serious topic, even a vital topic. And in there somewhere is the other topic, the definition of the authentic human. Because the bombardment of pseudo realities begins to produce inauthentic humans very quickly, spurious humans, as fake as the data pressing at them from all sides. That was prophetic right there because he's talking about what social media is doing to us. This is why people are becoming characters of themselves. This is why everything feels fake because it kind of is. This is why people are dissatisfied. They're always left wanting more. They're never fulfilled. Their bellies are never actually sated because we're living a fake life. And all the only thing at the end of this road is death, is to perish. I know you like your trucks and your toys and your money, but hey, maybe we could all figure out a way that we could just trade that stuff. And while we use what's here and weren't trying to consume all of it, like I'm talking about, perishable goods and stuff that we have here, maybe we could all have a little bit of time to find a task or a skill set that we're good at and we could barter for in our own communities. Money is half the problem. It's driving people to grift hard for money, meaning they're acting, they're doing anything to go viral, even hurting other people that they have no right to harm. And dare I say, it could possibly actually be creating NPCs. I don't know. I'm getting kind of suspicious myself. My two topics are one topic. They unite at this point. Fake realities will create fake humans, or fake humans will generate fake realities and then sell them to other humans, turning them eventually into forgeries of themselves. OnlyFans, anyone? Facebook? Instagram? How many people have sold pictures of me around? I don't even want to know. Pictures that were between me and my husband, I thought. Oh, didn't know I knew that one, did you? So we wind up with fake humans inventing fake realities and then peddling them to other fake humans. It is just a very large version of Disneyland. You can have the pirate ride or the Lincoln simulacrum, simulacrum, or Mr. Toad's wild ride. Oh my gosh, I didn't know Mr. Toad was at Disneyland. You can have all of them, but none is true. In my writing, I got so interested in fakes that I finally caught up with the concept of fake fakes. This is funny. For example, in Disneyland, there are fake birds worked by electric motors, which emit caws and shrieks as you pass by them. Suppose some night all of us sneaked into the park with real birds and substituted them for the artificial ones. Imagine the horror the Disneyland officials would feel when they discovered the cruel hoax. Real birds, and perhaps someday even real hippos and lions. Consternation, the park being cunningly transmuted from the unreal to the real by sinister forces. For instance, suppose the Matterhorn turned into a genuine snow-covered mountain. What if the entire place, by a miracle of God's power and wisdom, was changed in a moment, in the blink of an eye, into something incorruptible? They would have to close down. In Plato's Timaeus, God does not create the universe as the Christian God. He simply finds it one day. I forgive me for saying so, but I think that might be part of the LDS doctrine as well. I could be wrong. I could, but I know I've heard that, and I thought that that's where I had read it was in their doctrine. Not sure, but it could be. And please, by all means, discuss amongst yourself what you guys think reality is. We need to talk about these things if we're ever going to find answers. Okay. Oh, God finds the universe. It is in a state of total chaos. God sets to work to transform the chaos into order. That idea appeals to me, and I've adapted it to fit my intellectual needs. What if are you my intellectual needs? I love how he says that. Like that his intellectual needs. He has to theorize or he'll expire, right? It's just I don't know, it's funny. And writers, when people are passionate about what they do, it's infectious, right? And it's kind of adorable to me. And I don't mean that in a sensual way. Like again, on my channel, we need to like not be thinking of those things because I'm very rarely, if ever, talking in that matter. What if our universe started out as not quite real, a sort of illusion, as the Hindu religion teaches, and God, out of love and kindness for us, is slowly transmuting it, slowly and secretly, into something real? Like when Pinocchio became a real boy, I tell God all the time, please, God, make me a real girl. Doesn't have to face entropy and doesn't have to age and be sick or sore or any of these things. um, I kind of think too, this is where you could fit in the book of Revelation. God, this whole time since Jesus has been gone, and since the Mandela effect, whatever we have, whatever it is, the high strangeness really revved up. Um, we could say that the new earth is being created. And that's why for a second some of us have two sets of memories and then there's one. And I mean, we don't. I don't know. Like I said, I have a feeling we've been reset ourselves in the minds through hypnosis of some kind, but that's not this video. And I've talked about that at length pretty much. We will talk about it more though, because Philip K. Dick brings that up. And again, I'm not lying. These are things we've talked about on this channel for years now. And am I a character in his book? I don't know, because all these things he's writing, I faced some of this too. And now I'm reading it. And I told you that for me, time has went backwards for a long time. Now let me preface by saying this. I'm not Benjamin Button. I'm not turning into a baby. Please don't get that idea in my head. I do not want to be a little kid again, or at least not that little. But hold on. That is a thought that I had is that the new earth and this old earth are kind of trying to start to separate. I don't know if if I'm saying that right, because again, these are esoteric topics and we could debate about this all day. Again, what do you guys think? I don't like there's certain things I feel like I have a handle on, and there are certain other things where I'm like, I need to study a lot more, or I need to meditate a lot more, or I need to pray a lot more, or something, because there are certain things I'm still like really lost on. And that thing about the birds reminded me of that campaign of birds aren't real. But anyway, it said that time regresses for me. Time goes kind of backwards, like the queen in Alice in Wonderland when she starts bleeding and she says, "Oh, I must get pricked by a pin later," and she does, but she starts bleeding before she gets pricked. That's kind of how things work for me. Like I'll be really sad and I don't understand why, and I'll be teary eyed, for example, and then like something will happen, or somebody will be hurt, or I'll hurt somebody unintentionally. Something will happen to make me cry or sad, and I it happens in reverse. And he thinks, again, I'm not the only one who thinks these things. It's not cause and effect. It seems to be effect and cause. And if that's true, then how are we supposed to navigate? And that's why you do all things from love. And that's why you stay right where you stay in the present and you don't try to look back very often and you don't try to look too far ahead. All right. We would not be aware of this transformation since we were not aware that our world was an illusion to begin with. This technically is a Gnostic idea. Gnosticism is a religion which embraced Jews, Christians, and pagans for several centuries. I have been accused of holding Gnostic ideas. I guess I do. Yeah, same there, Philip. At one time, I would have been burned, but some of their ideas intrigued me. One time, when I was researching Gnosticism in the Britannica, I came across mention of a Gnostic codex called The Unreal God and the Aspects of His Non Existent. I'm sorry. An idea which reduced me to helpless laughter. Yes. Why would you write that? The unreal God and the aspects of his non ex I think I get it though. What kind of person would write about something that he knows doesn't exist? And how can something that doesn't exist have aspects? But then I realized that I've been writing about these matters for over 25 years. I guess there is a lot of latitude in what you can say when writing about a topic that does not exist. Here's another clue. Here's a breadcrumb. If you watch my videos from the beginning, I explained that I was going to tell you when these came up. Here's another clue. Your first clue was Disneyland. There was another clue or two in between, but this is the next big clue. A friend of mine once published a book called Snakes of Hawaii. A number of libraries wrote him ordering copies. Well, there are no snakes in Hawaii. All the pages of his book were blank. Hold up, you said what now? We had a snake in the Garden of Eden, but there's no snakes in Hawaii. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Lori Daybell and Chad Daybell, Lori said she's to train the 144,000, or not train, but like preach to them. And I said, since she came back from Hawaii, she did not look like the same person. What if Hawaii is Eden? We're gonna start looking next. I know I'm gonna drive you people nuts. Next, we're gonna start looking at Hawaii. Not in this video, but in our next geographical study of the United States, we're gonna look at Hawaii. And I know that sounds wild. That's what we're gonna do because of this clue. There are no snakes in Hawaii. I had no clue that there was no snakes in Hawaii. Never heard such a thing in my life. Like not even a water moccasin. But it's true. I looked it up. I didn't know it. Had no idea. Okay, moving on. Of course, in science fiction, no pretense is made that the worlds described are real. This is why we call it fiction. The reader is warned in advance not to believe what he is about to read. Equally true, the visitors to Disneyland understand that Mr. Toad does not really exist and that pirates are animated by motors and servo assist mechanisms, relays, and electronic circuits. So no deception is taking place. Not that way. And yet, the strange thing is, in some way, some real way, much of what appears under the title science fiction is true. It may not be literally true, I suppose. We have not really been invaded by creatures from another star system, as depicted in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The producers of that film never intended for us to believe it. Or did they? What do you guys think? Is it disclosure? Do you think it's easier to have leaks of disclosure when you leak them as fiction? Do you think that's why we see some truth in the books and the movies? Some people call it predictive programming. I'd go further than that. I'd call it predicting reality. Think about it. If what we're saying is true, if my theory that I've posited since the beginning of this channel, not Berean Gem, but this one, what if we are able to write reality write our own stories? These are things we need to think over. Like that's all included in this type of theorizing. And again, you don't have to accept, believe, receive any of this. But we definitely know that reality is not what we've been told. We've been lied to a lot. There does seem to be certain things that hold true. Not very many, but certain things. And more important, if they did intend to state this, is it actually true? That is the issue. Not does the author or producer believe it, but is it true? Because quite by accident, in the pursuit of a good yarn, a science fiction author or producer or screenwriter might stumble onto the truth and only later realize it. So now this part is up for debate. Okay, you have to decide in this next part, did Philip K. Dick actually intend to pepper some codes? And the codes that I'm talking about, those are my own. Most people haven't caught on to the fact that we have reality clues all around us and there's breadcrumbs in the things we say to each other every day. But most people don't realize it. But these people who spend their time researching, studying, basking with words. The second I became suspicious of this theory that this might actually be happening, I told you guys. Because if we can change reality this easy, that means we have a responsibility to act more in accordance with, you know, a certain type of decorum. If we're writing reality, we need to be writing proper things and not destructive, you know. Maybe that's why they didn't teach everyone to read and write in the beginning. And I will point you to one last thing before I continue this. The Book of Enoch says that the fallen watchers taught us how to read and write. Does that mean we should not be reading and writing? Christ called the scribes liars. Christ called the scribes liars. Did he want his story wrote down? Obviously, he allowed it to happen. They were right there with him. Well, I mean, it was sometime after for some of them. For Luke and Paul, but Matthew was there. What do you guys think? I don't know. I'm at I don't put anything past the creator of the universe, but I know that if my words, I think I've been a lot more careful with my words since I've discovered they could be more influential. Let's remove the word power because it sounds like somebody has seniority over someone else. Let's replace power with influential, right? Ever since I learned that my words could be more influential than I ever knew, I've tried to monitor them. So again, I don't have the chat turned off, so I'm not sure why nobody's interacting, but please feel free to do so. The basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. God, I say that all the time. If you can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use the words. George Orwell made this clear in his novel 1984. But another way to control the minds of people is to control their perceptions. If you can get them to see the world as you do, they will think as you do. Comprehension follows perception. Do you have somebody like that in your life that tries to tell you how everything is, tries to tell you you're wrong about everything? Stand up to them, okay? See the world through your eyes. Nobody else is living your experience but you. Stop allowing somebody else to control the narrative in your head, thus in your life. It'll control your actions too. I know because I used to be that person. And I'm telling you, stop it. You are valuable. You are more money. You are more valuable than any money, than any grift, than any viral video. You have value. Comprehension follows perception. How do you get them to see the reality you see? After all, it is only one reality of many. Images are a basic constituent, pictures. This is why the power of TV to influence young minds is so staggeringly vast. Words and pictures are synchronized. The possibility of total control of the viewer exists, especially the young viewer. TV viewing is a kind of sleep learning. An EEG of a person watching TV shows that after about half an hour, the brain decides that nothing is happening and it goes into a hypnoidal twilight state. That's what they'll give you before like basic surgery, a twilight state, sedation, emitting. I'm not a doctor, no part of this is medical advice. My my disclaimers are in the description box. Boy, emitting alpha waves. This is because there is such little eye motion. In addition, much of the information is graphic and therefore passes into the right hemisphere of the brain rather than being processed by the left, where the conscious personality is located. Recent experiments indicate that much of what we see on the TV screen is received on a subliminal basis. We only imagine that we consciously see what is there. The bulk of the messages elude our attention. Literally, after a few hours of TV watching, we do not know what we have seen. Our memories are spurious, like our memories of dreams. The blanks are filled in retrospectively and falsified. We have participated unknowingly in the creation of a spurious reality, and then we have obligingly fed it to ourselves. We have colluded in our own doom. Ooh, do you read that what he says? How you fill in the blanks, your memory will do that retrospectively. I do believe that there's a portion of the Mandela effect that is misremembrance. Absolutely. But not the whole thing. But again, I'm a scientist when I theorize and I research. I believe in testing and retesting and all of those things. So I go through the gamut. I get rid of anything that can be changed or falsified easily. I go through anything that's a brand name change, got to go. Only hard, real, and there's very little of that, guys. No brand name stays the same. Nothing stays the same. And you cannot trust digital information because it can be changed at any time. And I say this being someone who delivers you information that is somewhat digital. Now, granted, it comes from books that you can go get yourself, and I try to leave all the sources, but, you know, in the end, this is why proper media literacy is very important. And everybody had a shared reality for a long time. And that's why things were going well and America was prospering. But everybody wants to go their own way now. And apparently, I don't know, at that point, I would just turn the media off because they want us to like, they want our attention. Do they even exist beyond the screen? Are they real people? I don't know anymore. You don't see press conferences like you used to, like this Philip K. Dick interview that he did 1977 in France. I mean, there was people everywhere, actual reporters, and they weren't going from one camera angle to the other. Do you know how devious that is? That's why those people don't look like that in real life either. None of those people look like that in real life. That's why I say, man, I live near a lot of people that look like a lot of these politicians, but they're just a little bit off because digital. And you have the this angle and that angle. Back in the day, you would show the person at the podium and the audience in the same shot. It's called a wide angle lens. There's a reason they don't do that now. There's a reason their little pressers now are in some little box. That is the smallest room I have ever seen, and they never looked like that in the White House press conferences before Biden, I don't think. I know Obama wasn't in no tiny room like that. No way. Anyways, moving on. And I say this as and again, mind control. It is the politics, people that never come out of those basic paradigms of like basic politics, basic entertainment. That is what I would classify as a lifer NPC. And no, I don't believe that these people are less than. I don't believe that you can do them harm. I just believe they're happy where they're at. They don't want to dig for answers. They don't care about answers. They're good with their football, their TV dinner, and their price is right. And that's fine for them. It's not enough for me. And I know it's not enough for some of you. So even though this is a super small channel and even though I don't bring much of a service here, I do hope that we can have some type of fellowship. Because on the other channel, we always talked at a great length. And on this one, again, I don't know how much the channel is being hidden, but please feel free to fellowship and talk amongst yourselves. I mean, I pray for you people on a daily basis, so it would be nice to have a fellowship again. Why nobody is commenting, I don't know. But I did not shut them off. They're right there for anyone that wants to see them. Okay, so moving on. I'm probably going to read half of this and then I will read the other half in the next video. I was thinking of doing like a marathon length one. But I don't know what purpose that would really serve, to be honest. Anyways, moving on. Now, and he says, and I say this as a professional fiction writer, the producers, script writers, and directors who create these video audio worlds do not know how much of their content is true. In other words, they are victim of their own product along with us. I don't agree with that completely. Some of if I could figure this out, then other people, like I'm slow, like I'm not slow, right? I'm book smart and I got good grades in school. But if I could figure something like this out, as easily distracted a person, I guess, as I have always been by, by the basics of the paradigm, then anybody can figure this out. Which is probably why they hate me and they hide the channels and they stalk me and all this other weird crap. Speaking for myself, I do not know how much of my writing is true or which parts, if any, are true. This is a potentially lethal situation. We have fiction mimicking truth and truth mimicking fiction. We have a dangerous overlap, a dangerous blur. And remember, this was 1978, I think or 77, 78. We have fiction mimicking truth and truth mimicking fiction. We have a dangerous overlap, a dangerous blur. And in all probability, it is not deliberate. In fact, that is part of the problem. You cannot legislate an author into correctly labeling his product, like a can of pudding whose ingredients are listed on the label. You cannot compel him to declare what part is true and what isn't if he himself does not know. It is an eerie experience to write something into a novel. Here we go. Here is the crux of my channel, this channel, one of the main, other than pointing to the gospel of Christ and telling you the good news, like, hey, death is an illusion. Christ beat it for us. We don't got to do that. Like, we should be enjoying, abiding in joy at this time, though nobody wants to hear me. This is the crux of this. So check this out. It is an eerie experience to write something believing it is fiction, and to learn later on, perhaps years later, that it is true. Now that's the question here too. That's the subcategory. Again, you've got to be intellectual to approach some of these topics. And some people today are just being led here and there because they're not working, they're not training their brain. They're not working the muscle that is their brain. And I'm talking to myself here as I say that. So please don't think like I'm condescending you. Because I know I'm not the sharpest crayon in the box. And again, if I could figure this stuff out, anybody could. I'm probably one of the last people to figure it out, to be honest. I hope not. But sometimes it feels that way. So it is an eerie experience to write something into a novel, believing it is pure fiction, and to learn later on, perhaps years later, that it's true. Now, was it precognition? Or did he create it? Did he write it into being? I would like to give you an example. It's something that I do not understand. Perhaps you can come up with a theory. I can't. Now, his books are titled oddly, so just go with it if you're new here. In 1970, I, meaning Philip K. Dick, wrote a novel called Flow My Tears, the policeman said. One of the characters is a 19-year-old girl named Kathy. Her husband's name is Jack. Kathy appears to work for the criminal underground, but later, as we read deeper into the novel, we discover that actually she is working for the police. She has a relationship going on with a police inspector. The character is pure fiction, or at least I thought it was. Anyhow, on Christmas Day of 1970, I met a girl named Kathy. This was after I had finished the novel, you understand. She was 19 years old. Her boyfriend was named Jack. I soon learned that Kathy was a dealer. I spent months trying to get her to give up dealing. I kept warning her again and again that she would get caught. Then, one evening, as we were entering a restaurant together, Kathy stopped short and said, I can't go in. Seated in the restaurant was a police inspector whom I knew. I have to tell you the truth, Kathy said. I have a relationship with him. Certainly, these are odd coincidences. Perhaps I have precognition. Precognition, meaning you predict things that happen. But the mystery becomes even more perplexing. The next day, and that's the thing, they do, we've talked about the changing words a lot in etymological studies, and that's why we dig into the words on this channel. But words in the 70s for like of the occult were different. Like you had ESP and psychic, and now it's more telepathy and telekinesis, but they all kind of mean the same or similar things. Not all of them, but a lot of them. In 1974, the novel was published by Doubleday. Publishing companies are important too, I think. I'm going to look into what kind of paper they use. One afternoon, I was talking to my priest. I'm an Episcopalian. And I had to look that up because I didn't know what an Episcopalian was. That's how not like I was raised Catholic. That is the one church we're told. So again, somebody's reality can be so manipulated by the people around them. And they might not even realize they're doing it, right? It's the Russian doll thing, one doll inside of another inside of another. Right. And I happen to mention to him an important scene near the end of the novel in which the character, Felix Buckman, meets a black stranger at an all night gas station and they begin to talk. As I describe the scene in more and more detail, this makes me laugh. And again, usually I don't read things through before I go on the channel because I want all the synchronicities that may or may not happen to be organic. This I did read first because I just couldn't put it down. Like I read Philip K. Dick all day yesterday. I was a bum because Sunday we did some stuff that I wasn't planning. But this is strange. Okay. So, oh, hold on, where was I? I'm an Episcopalian. Da 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 da. So I had to look that up. I had to look up Episcopalian. I'm sorry. I just had a flash of what might have been some more manipulation in my own life on Sunday, and it distracted me and kind of upset me for a second. I apologize. So one afternoon, Philip was talking to his priest, an Episcopalian, and he happened to mention to him an important scene near the end of the novel in which the character, Felix Buckman, meets a black stranger at an all night gas station, and they begin to talk. As I described the scene in more and more detail, my priest became progressively more agitated. At last he said, That is a scene from the book of Acts, from the Bible. I can just see him getting frustrated, like, did you copy that? In Acts, the person who meets the black man on the road is named Philip. Your name. Father Rash was so upset by the resemblance that he could not even locate the scene in his Bible. Read Acts, he instructs me, and you'll agree it's the same down to specific details. Now, that is in the Bible. It's in the digital Bible. I have not looked it up in in my physical Bible yet, but I'm pretty sure I remember it too, unless they're trying to convince me to remember something I don't actually remember. But if we go into the deeper writing of his exegesis, because again, it's got some really good notes on reality and time, and I think you'll benefit from it. That's why I do it. Um, his channel definitely isn't a money grift, that's for sure. I'm sorry. That really distracted me. I went home and read the scene in Acts. Yes, Father Ash was right. The scene in my novel was an obvious retelling of the scene in Acts. And I've never read Acts, I must admit. But again, the puzzle became deeper. In Acts, the high Roman official who arrests and interrogates St. Paul is named Felix, the same name as my character. And my character, Felix Buckman, is a high ranking police general. In fact, in my novel, he holds the same office as Felix in the Book of Acts, the final authority. There is a conversation in my novel which very closely resembles a conversation between Felix and Paul. Now, there's another possibility for something that's happening here. And if he talks about it in like his deeper writing, how do you clear your thoughts? I don't clear my thoughts. One should not clear their thoughts as they meditate. I don't think there's a way to do that. And I don't want a sentient being shouldn't be able to clear your thoughts. The first thing a conscious being does is think. The first thing God did was thought and then spoke, I am, right? So I don't promote clearing your thoughts. I mean, I guess other people talk about doing it and can do it. I don't meditate that way. I never have. Um, I'll either focus on like a question that I have for the Lord. Now and this actually is it's a good thing I popped over there because this gets into this topic. There's this thing called this I don't know if it's a doctrine. I won't use that strong of a word, but there's this concept called the Akashic records, and it is that all of the records of human history are contained in like this ethereum and this ether that is around us, and that we can pluck things out of there almost any time. All of human history. Now, if you think about a computer and a computer code, that makes sense. In the background, I can't see right now in the background, and you can't see the computer code, right? That's bouncing around. We can't see that happening. We can only see what we're interacting with. Does that make sense? We can't see the code that puts us here. We can only see us. I hope that, not to be weird, but the Akashic records, now that could be what's happening here is he is plucking information from the spiritual realm, and he didn't even know it. And this also plays into my original theory when I talked to you guys a while back when I did the Pinocchio videos and the um what was the other video? Little Mermaid video. When I did those two, we talked about this theory I had that God will get the Bible story, the gospel story out to every person. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. I don't care how it's shared with you. Somebody might not even be telling you that's what they're sharing with you. It's just going to be shared with you because it's in every story. I've seen it in every story I've read. There is the hero's journey, and the original hero, like for 2,000 years, has been Christ. Now, they say that there were all these ones before Christ, but were there? Do we know this? Now, we are told, and I can tell you for a fact that the Norse Odin that resembles Christ, allegedly, what he did was like a form of self-flagellation almost. He went through the physical pain to be propelled into such a state as where he could grasp information and pluck it out of this aether stuff. And again, I'm not debating theology here. I'm just giving you the information. I'm not telling you to like Norse people, hate Norse, none of that. I'm just giving you the information. So please don't come for me. I'm just giving you the information. All right, but then again, the puzzle became deeper. He said that this Felix has the same name as his character, and he's a high-ranking police official, and he's the final authority. He's like, there's a conversation in his novel which closely resembles a conversation between Felix and Paul. Well, I decided to try for any further resemblances. The main character in my novel is named Jason. I got an index to the Bible and looked to see if anyone named Jason appears anywhere in the Bible. I couldn't remember any. Well, a man named Jason appears once and only once in the Bible. It is in the book of Acts. I didn't know that. And as if to plague me further with coincidences, in my novel, Jason is fleeing from the authorities and takes refuge in a person's house. And in Acts, the man named Jason shelters a fugitive from the law in his house. An exact inversion of the situation in my novel, as if the mysterious spirit with a capital S responsible for all this was having a sort of laugh about the whole thing. Felix Jason and the meeting on the road with the black man who is a complete stranger. In Acts, the disciple Philip baptizes the black man, who then goes away rejoicing. In my novel, Felix Buckman reaches out to the black stranger for emotional support because Felix's sister has just died and he is falling apart psychologically. The black man stirs up Buckman's spirits, and although Buckman doesn't go away rejoicing, at least his tears have stopped falling. He has been flying home, weeping over the death of his sister, and has had to reach out to someone, anyone, even a total stranger. It is an encounter between two strangers on the road which changes the life of one of them, both in my novel and in Acts. And one final quirk by the mysterious spirit at work. The name Felix is the Latin word for happy, which I did not know when I wrote the novel. Curiouser and curiouser. A careful study of my novel shows that for reasons which I cannot even begin to explain, I had managed to retell several of the basic incidents from a particular book of the Bible and even had the right names. What could explain this? That was 4 years ago that I discovered all this. For 4 years, I have tried to come up with a theory, and I have not. I doubt if I ever will. Pause, please. I have to say that I'm going to read the book of Acts with totally new eyes now and see if anything jumps out, because every time I've tried to fall asleep to the Bible story movie, I fall asleep. Well, I mean, I don't try to fall asleep to it. Every time I try to watch it, I fall asleep. And it's been a while since I've read the book of Acts, like a long time, probably since I was first saved. Well, started since I first came back to God. I believe salvation is a process. You don't have to believe that. You are not me, and I am not you. Yes, please. By all means, guys, have conversations. I'm not gonna like boot anybody. This is no fun for me if everybody else isn't enjoying it or learning something from it or taking something away. Otherwise, I'm not gonna waste my time and I'm just gonna take my talk and I'm gonna hit the road now instead of waiting for a little while longer. But the mystery had not ended there. Oh, it says for 4 years he tried to come up with a theory and he had not yet. He doubts if he ever would. But the mystery had not ended there, as I had imagined. 2 months ago, I was walking up to the mailbox late at night to mail off a letter. This is where I think it gets spooky. And also, and now I don't know, maybe one of his friends paid somebody to do this. Like I could just imagine, because he's in his exegesis, he's writing to all his friends. Because writers write, like they like to write. They don't write to just work. They write letters to people. Like it's a passion of theirs. I don't know how to say it. Like they write journals, they write everything. So in his exegesis, he's got these friends that he corresponds with who are all over the place, and you can't always get to see people. And I think email, I don't think email was around yet, but they transferred a lot of them into emails. Excuse me, guys. Anyways, I need a puff on my inhaler, I thought. I don't know where it's at. It is so sticky up here, Northeast Ohio, and it looks like it's 5 at night. I don't know what is going on. And it's not early anymore. Oh, time flies sometimes. All right, so the mystery had not ended there as he had imagined. 2 months ago, he was walking up to the mailbox late at night to mail a letter, and also to enjoy the sight of St. Joseph's Church, which sits opposite my apartment building. I noticed a man loitering suspiciously by a parked car. It looked as if he was attempting to steal the car, or maybe something from it. As I returned from the mailbox, the man hid behind a tree. On impulse, I walked up to him and asked, "Is anything the matter?" "I'm out of gas," the man said, "and I have no money." Incredibly, because I've never done this before, I got out my wallet, took all the money from it, and handed the money to him. He then shook hands with me and asked where I lived so that he could later pay the money back. I returned to my apartment, and then I realized that the money would do him no good since there was no gas station within walking distance. So I returned in my car. The man had a metal gas can in the trunk of his car, and together we drove in my car to an all-night gas station. Soon we were standing there, two strangers as the pump jockey. That's a person who fills your gas pump for you. Filled the metal gas can. Suddenly I realized that this was the scene in my novel, the novel written 8 years before. The all-night gas station was exactly as I had envisioned it in my inner eye, when I wrote the scene. The glaring white light, the pump jockey, and now I saw something which I had not seen before. The stranger who I was helping was black. We drove back, and he's not saying that because he's prejudiced. He's saying that because that's who it was in his book too, and that's who it is in Acts as well. We drove back to his dog cart. Now here's the thing. This is where you get into like the Shrek Onion thing, or you get into the Russian doll thing. So the book of Acts was written, right? And then allegedly, 1,000 years later, Philip K. Dick writes a book that has a story from the book of Acts in his book. All right. And that's the other thing too, though. Like you have to take some of it with a grain of salt from some people, because the Bible is there is no copyright on it, and that's the bad thing. That's why people are able to change it, not supernaturally, but through editing, which is of the devil, so it's almost the same thing. But and censoring. But yeah, it was first in the Bible, then it was in his book, now it's in his real life. How many people knew this? How many people knew they had influence like this and wrote really mucked up things like Orwell? Did Orwell prophesy it, predict it, or did he make it happen? I'm not sure where I'm at on that one. Honestly, I don't know what I feel. I do believe some people already know that this is how certain things work, that certain people have more influence than others. I'm not, and please don't go to like take this to somewhere where you're assuming I'm saying the Bible is fake. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying all of us who write with ink on paper seem to have a variety of different levels of influence. And if you discover that you are one of those people, you should work darn hard to clean out your ear gates, your eye gates, and your temple, or never write again. Because people are going to bring, you could, I mean, if this is true, if a variety of different people have this power and or ability or level of influence, we'll say, on reality, like Dean Koontz, how he wrote about CV-19, he didn't call it that, he called it something different, but it all broke down the same way. He also wrote The Whisper Room about targeting different individuals. Orwell wrote the 1984. Are they trying to give us clues about how our reality already was? Because they want to get the truth out without it being censored, without the Gestapo coming to get them and drag them away? Or do they not know that they have those abilities? What do you guys think? I don't know what to think. Like, it could be either one. Probably, again, as always, it's a combination of a few things. Okay, so he says, what could explain all this? The answer I've come up with may not be correct, but it is the only answer I have. It has to do with time. Okay, now again, I'm not sure how he goes from from that to this theory, because I'm not in his mind, and my brain processes information a little differently, but somewhat similarly, oddly enough. Because I've had a lot of these same experiences. I've been on a quest, man. I have written about nothing, researched nothing until I figure what went on with my life and why it went so haywire. I either need to move so I'm not reminded of it and just be away from these people so I'm not always suspicious of life in general, or I need to find the truth. Like, there is no in between for me. It's either go off on the road and just live the rest of my life in quiet solitude and see the desert and get lost and leave the system, or do this, be obsessive and dig and dig and dig until I have answers. And I guess unless you've been through certain things, you don't understand it. So his theory is time in certain cases, in some important sense, time is not real. And I agree wholeheartedly. Or perhaps it is real, but not as we experience it or imagine it to be. True that. I had the acute, overwhelming certitude and still have that despite all the change we see, a specific, permanent landscape underlies the world of change, and that this invisible underlying landscape is that of the Bible. It specifically is the period immediately following the death and resurrection of Christ. It is, in other words, the time period of the book of Acts. Now, the book of Revelation originally is the apocalypse of John. John wrote it. And the apocalypse of Christ, it is supposed to be telling his witnessing of Christ's full ministry, his persecution, his death, and his ascension, and his ministering after his death and resurrection and his ascension. It is a culmination of all of those things, of the whole book. Just like you have an intro in a book, you also have a closer. Now, I know people will stop listening because they think I'm going to stop there and that's it. I believe some of the events are real. I believe some of them are historical. I believe some are spiritual and some are material. And I don't believe they're in chronological order. Not necessarily. And the woman, why people keep thinking the woman with the stars clothed and all this stuff, that's talking about Mother Mary too. It's talking about Christ's birth, his life, his ministry, his death, resurrection, ascension, and the end times. It's all of those things. Because for how many years have the Zionists been playing this game, guys? Every couple of years, they're calling it's the end, it's the Antichrist. Every few years. But that's how you keep their grifts going. People like Dabu, RFB, they've been on. But I mean, you know what? Noah preached for 150 years. So take everything. What I'm saying is take everything back to God. Take it all with a grain of salt. Every individual has a personal motivation, and every corporation does not have any human interest whatsoever. So always know who you're dealing with. It's time to stop playing at life and actually live. Because this stuff we're doing, throwing stuff at the walls and seeing what sticks, we need to live. We need to turn the TV off, turn the media off. The politics is a cult. That's its own religion. So I don't want to hear you say that you have no religion. Religion needs to stay out of politics, because politics, if you cannot tell, has turned into a dangerous cult in and of itself, if you want to go that far. I'd be more afraid of them than I would any Muslims or Christians or pagans. I'd be afraid of the politicians. If you want to be afraid, I don't care to be afraid myself. That's not where I dwell these days, unless it's healthy fear of the Lord and that which can make my soul snuffed out. Okay, so time is not real, or perhaps it is real, but we don't experience it as it should be. It says he had the acute and overwhelming certitude, and still have, that despite all the change we see. Now, I'm repeating this because I said this in 2 videos ago. Maybe it was the last video, because I remember somebody that has followed my channel, both of my channels, commented on it, and he doesn't comment often, but he was nice enough to leave a comment, and it was the Mandela effect video I just did. So I literally just said this in the last video, and now I'm reading it. I told you my life works in reverse. I have a thought about something, and then I read it, which confirms the thought. Most people, it's the other way. Cause and effect works the opposite for me too. Retrocausality is a thing in my life. And I honestly don't know how to avoid it, because how do you avoid it if time doesn't work the way you thought it did? Oh, these topics though, they make my life. They're awesome. He believes specifically we are in the book of Acts, okay? Now, Parmenides would be proud of me. That's the philosopher. I have gazed at a constantly changing world and declared that underneath it lies the eternal, the unchanging, the absolutely real. But how has this come about? If the real time circa is AD 50, then why do we see AD 1978? And if we are really living in the Roman Empire, somewhere in Syria, hello, if you don't know or you're new here, why don't you check out what I've been saying about what America really is, where we really are? And if we are really living in the Roman Empire, somewhere in Syria, why do we see the United States? Again, that's a breadcrumb. Is he doing it on purpose? I don't know. But if he is, he's brilliant. Because again, writers, entertainers, they have more leeway than regular folks like you and me. They can say certain things and put it under the guise of, well, I posed it as a theoretical question. It's not my fault it's true. Why are you so agitated? You're only proving my point. See what I mean? During the Middle Ages, a curious theory arose, which I will now present to you for what it is worth. It is the theory that the evil one, Satan, is the ape of God. Oh, I've said this so many times. That he creates spurious imitations of God's creation. Then interop. No, that's not how you say it either. I think that's that a typo? Interpolates. Extrapolates, I was thinking. Where'd it go? Interpolates them for that authentic creation. Does this odd theory help explain my experience? Are we to believe that we are occluded? And didn't I say this the other day? I said, I feel like something about a time dilation. And that's what he says here. So was I picking on something from the ether, from the Holy Spirit, or was I picking up on something that I was going to read in the next few days? Do you see what I mean? And that's where you got to be careful too, because is it just you? Are you sending yourself certain messages through time? Because it's you, right? You don't need consent to talk to yourself. Do you see what I mean? You don't have to pray to yourself. You don't have to ask consent. All you have to do is have a thought and say, all right, can I send this back to me yesterday about 3 o'clock? I'm not saying that'll work and it's that simplistic, but for the sake of theorizing here. Are we to believe that we are occluded, that we are deceived, that it is not 1978, but 50 AD, and Satan has spun a counterfeit reality to wither our faith in the return of Christ? See, that's one of the things, too, that's always hit me as funny. Well, if he's coming back, why has he left you here? If he loves you, why'd he leave you here? And the wearing out of the saints, that whole thing, and how we see this play for it being the book of Revelation, like or the time of tribulation anyway, like every 5 to 10 years we see that. It's like they want you to consent to having yourself come to harm. And that's the only reason I can think that they would keep replaying it over and over, is so that you can consent. Now, the reason God would be doing it all over again, or would be allowing it, would be so that every man got saved. Because again, God's will is that all shall be saved. All right. All right. Now you see the date over here, just so you know, this was written in he gave this speech in 1978, and this is they uploaded it in 2011, just so you know. So anything that's different or anything, it would go to the person who uploaded it here. But it seems to be whatever all the other sources said, so I pulled this one up because it's all together. Okay. This is funny. This gets funny too right here. I can just picture myself being examined by a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist says, "What year is it?" And I reply, 8050. The psychiatrist blinks and then asks, "And where are you?" In reply, "In Judea." "What the heck is that?" the psychiatrist asks. "It's part of the Roman Empire," I would have to answer. "Do you know who is president?" the psychiatrist would ask, and I would answer, "The procurator Felix." "You're pretty sure about this?" the psychiatrist would ask, meanwhile giving a covert signal to two very large psych techs. "Yep, I'd reply. Unless Felix has stepped down and been replaced by the procurator Festus, you see, St. Paul was held by Felix for. Who told you all this? The psychiatrist would break in irritably, and I would reply, the Holy Spirit. And after that, I'd be in the rubber room, inside gazing out and knowing exactly how come I was there. How many of us, though? This is what I despise about that. As much as I'm into human behavior, I kind of despise that cult, because they actually are, and I've gotten into this ad nauseum before about actual witchcraft going on in shrinks' offices. And again, I was raised by someone in the occult, so I know what to look for. Anyways, we all know, like, we've had moments like this, right? Where we know we sound crazy, but it is what happened, and we're telling it how it happened. Um, that's why that bothers me, because it's subjective, right? It's just like filming. It's like you're filming that person now that they're flipping out on you, but what did you do before you turned your phone camera on to mess with that person's life and their well-being? Why can't we just leave each other alone? Why are we so obsessed with harassing each other? I don't understand this whole concept of. Even my spouse, who I didn't know was into any of this type of stuff, did nothing but watch videos for a period of months about auditing and where it was legal to film from. Yeah, pretty messed up. Because you know what they're out there doing now. And this is a time of lawlessness. You know, when you're on film, when somebody else films you, you have to consent to it. It doesn't matter. You have to consent, especially for it to be put on television or on the internet. You have to consent. You want to tell me how they're asking all of these people for consent that they're showing in the worst positions, the homeless, the arrests that they're doing, the sweeps that they're doing. Conveniently, though, they don't know where the missing people are going. We have no idea what goes on. And most of you guys have no idea what's going on right now because you don't want to know and you don't want to hear it. Because you're like, oh my God, I'm being lectured. No. No. Do you want to be a citizen of the world? You're here listening to the video. Obviously, something drew you over here. The next time you see somebody filming somebody without their consent, ask them if they got consent. Because now we have people going into other people's property and exploring and doing urbex. You know, people own those properties. They paid for them. They might not be in the best shape. Some people actually live in those places that look abandoned. What people have not taught their children any respect at all for anybody. I can't believe the things that I'm seeing. You have to ask somebody's consent, and now they're out there making movies on their phone saying it's found footage with real people that never consented to being in there. You've got real people being arrested with their faces not blurred, some of them women with body parts hanging out because things get rough. I'm sure you did not ask her if she consented to being on those videos. In fact, I know you didn't. And why is it just women and not men? I'm not seeing any men being drug off like I am the women. And the men's clothes never accidentally fall off. Their trousers never accidentally drop. Why is the woman always wrestled to the ground? And she's disheveled and too much of her showing. Have some good sense, man, and stop putting this stuff on YouTube. Those are people's mothers. And I know that women are out there acting fools right now. I get it. I'm not saying that they're not, you know, I'm not even saying that they shouldn't be arrested. I don't know the situation. But I do know you shouldn't be using people's images because they're made in the image of God. And the one you're offending there is the most high God, creator, maker. If he didn't allow you to put it up, you probably shouldn't be doing it. But maybe he's allowing some people to be shamed right now. I don't know. But I'm telling you, know your rights. And darn well ask if you don't want to show up somewhere. Say, hey, I don't want that up. And if they tell you you're in public, say, okay, but I'm a private citizen and I would like you to blur my face. And they have to abide by that. It doesn't matter if they're filming in public. That doesn't matter. Some people, it goes against their religion. They don't want to be filmed. We have got to stop forcing our beliefs and our ways. And by forcing, I mean also just assuming that everybody thinks like you. We don't all think the same. We shouldn't have to all think the same. We shouldn't have to all be the same. Everything in that conversation would be true in a sense, although palpably not true in another. I know perfectly well that the date is 1978 and that Jimmy Carter is president, and that I live in Santa Ana, California, in the United States. I even know how to get from my apartment to Disneyland, a fact I can't seem to forget. And surely no Disneyland existed back at the time of St. Paul. See, he keeps going back to Disneyland, dude. There's something about that place. I don't know what it is. I haven't figured it out yet. Everybody's been there but me. It's another place everybody goes but me. Everybody's been to New York but me. So if I force myself to be very rational and reasonable and all those other good things, I must admit that the existence of Disneyland, which I know is real, proves that we are not living in Judea in AD 50. The idea of St. Paul whirling around in the giant teacups while composing First Corinthians as Paris TV films him with a telephoto lens, that just can't be. St. Paul would never go near Disneyland. Only children, tourists, and visiting Soviet high officials ever go to Disneyland. Saints do not. Do you see how he's saying that there? It takes me back to in the time of the end, good things will be labeled bad and bad will be labeled good. Everybody's hating on Disney. I know they're saying they groom children, but that's Disney Plus. We're talking about the original Disney that people like me grew up with. Saints do not. So, like this, do you see it? Or is it just my imagination? This whole paragraph hits weird. Saints do not. Oh, no, no, no. It's like a child when they tell you, when they're lying to you and they try to convince you of something and they do it too far, too much. There's a clue here and I don't know what it is. With a telephoto lens. And I don't understand, why is Paris TV, if he lives in California that does have a Disneyland, allegedly, I've heard. Why is Paris TV at Disneyland? I don't understand. Someone make it make sense for me. Anyone who was like educated wrongly? Am I like some big laughing stock because everybody else knows like the truth about how the geography works here? I don't know. This is weird. But again, that's hitting me weird. All right, but somehow that biblical material snared my unconscious and crept into my novel, and equally true for some reason in 1978, I relived a scene which I described back in 1970. What I'm saying is this: there is internal evidence in at least one of my novels that another reality, an unchanging one, exactly as Parmenides and Plato suspected, underlies the visible, phenomenal world of change, and somehow, in some way, perhaps to our surprise, we can cut through to it. Or rather, a mysterious spirit can put us in touch with it, if it wishes us to see this permanent other landscape. Time passes, thousands of years pass, but at the same instant that we see this contemporary world, the ancient world, the world of the Bible, is concealed beneath it, still there and still real, eternally so. Shall I go for broke and tell you the rest of this peculiar story? I'll do so, having gone this far already. My novel, Flow My Tears, the policeman said, was released by Doubleday in February of 1974. This is another breadcrumb coming, and we have talked about this ad nauseum. If you want to know where I talk about this specific topic, go to my playlist about DNA and alien abductions. That's where I talk about this. Because whatever happened to him, this is what happened to me. This is one of the things that started my intense investigation into reality. And with me, it was a combination, I think, of anesthesia one year, and then in 2018-19, it was boom, boom, boom. I had a head injury. But I also had a funny thing happen. Again, I think something was planned for me. And I caught on and I said, I do not consent. I'm not being a sacrifice. So I caught on to what they were trying to do. And again, they deliver these words to your subconscious subliminally so that you accept them and receive them and you do not object to your own torture. And it's heinous because again, you have to consent to it. That's why certain churches, and I'm not going to go too far into this right now in this video, but that's why certain churches tell you to always submit. Did Christ do that? Yeah, sure. He started a revolution just by his words, though. He didn't even try. But he was passive. He was a pacifist. Most people don't like hearing that, but it's true. He's a pacifist. He's coming back to judge. All right? That doesn't mean that it's going to be much of a fight. And he'll be a just judge. Who knows what'll exactly happen? Because I don't think we know fully. We can't. We have a lot of conjectures what we have. And you could say, oh, this is doctrine, but it's still doctrine that came from a man on this side of the veil, most of it. Christ's doctrine you can see if you dig deep enough, but again, most people don't want to hear that either because they don't want to change their lives. They want to have pleasure, and that's all they care about is pleasure. Dionysus is their god, and pleasure is all they care about. But you know what comes with the god of Dionysus and a life of pleasure and nothing else? Insanity. And that's just true. Okay, Sammy, you are snoring like quite a lot. Okay, here we go. The week after his book, the same one that had this whole book of Acts coincidence in it, he's going to talk about another synchronicity that happened when this book was published. Okay, it was released by Doubleday in February of 1974. The week after it was released, it says, Phillip says, I had 2 impacted wisdom teeth removed under sodium pentothal. And again, I'm not a doctor, I'm reading this, but I will tell you my own experience. I'm not a doctor, this is not medical advice. No part of the channel is medical advice. Under sodium pentothal, later that day, I found myself in intense pain. My wife phoned the oral surgeon, and he phoned a pharmacy. Half an hour later, there was a knock at the door, the delivery person from the pharmacy with the pain medication. Although I was bleeding and sick and weak, I felt the need to answer the knock on the door myself. When I opened the door, I found myself facing a young woman who wore a shining gold necklace in the center of which was a gleaming gold fish. This is where it gets really weird. For some reason, I was hypnotized by the gleaming golden fish. I forgot my pain, forgot the medication, forgot why the girl was there. I just kept staring at the fish sign. What does that mean? I asked her. The girl touched the glimmering golden fish with her hand and said, This is a sign worn by the early Christians. She then gave me the package of medication. In that instant, as I stared at the gleaming fish sign and heard her words, I suddenly experienced what I later learned is called anamnesis, a Greek word meaning literally loss of forgetfulness. Let me do a brief interjection here. How many of us have called that veil the veil of forgetfulness? And that is what Christ didn't have, you know? He didn't have that veil of forgetfulness. He knew who he was, and when he came here and why he was here. Very few of us remember much of that or know why we're here. So that means the loss of forgetfulness. I remembered who I was and where I was. In an instant, in the twinkling of an eye, it all came back to me. And not only could I remember it, but I could see it. The girl was a secret Christian, and so was I. We lived in fear of detection by the Romans. We had to communicate with cryptic signs. She had just told me all this. And it was true. For a short time, as hard as this is to believe or explain, I saw fading into view the black prison-like contours of hateful Rome. But of much more importance, I remembered Jesus, who had just recently been with us and had gone temporarily away and would very soon return. My emotion was one of joy. We were secretly preparing to welcome him back. It would not be long, and the Romans did not know. They thought he was dead, forever dead. That was our great secret, our joyous knowledge. Despite all appearances, Christ was going to return, and our delight and anticipation was boundless. Isn't it odd that this strange event, this recovery of lost memory, occurred only a week after Flow My Tears was released? And it is Flow My Tears which contains the replication of people and events from the book of Acts, which is set at the precise moment in time, just after Jesus' death and resurrection, that I remembered by means of the golden fish sign as having just taken place. If you were me and had this happen to you, I'm sure you wouldn't be able to leave it alone. You would seek a theory that would account for it. For over 4 years now, I've been trying one theory after another: circular time, frozen time, timeless time, what is called sacred as contrasted to mundane time. I can't count the theories I've tried out. One constant has prevailed, though, throughout all theories. There must indeed be a mysterious Holy Spirit which has an exact and intimate relation to Christ, which can indwell in human minds, guide and inform them, and even express itself through those humans, even without their awareness. In the writing of Flow My Tears back in 1970, there was one unusual event which I realized at the time was not ordinary, was not a part of the regular writing process. I had a dream one night, an especially vivid dream, and when I woke, I found myself under the compulsion, the absolute necessity of getting the dream into the text of the novel precisely as I had dreamed it. In getting the dream exactly right, I had to do 11 drafts of the final part of the manuscript until I was satisfied. Hold, please. I'm going to do something quickly here. Oh, sorry. I want to pull something up because I took a screenshot yesterday when I was researching a little bit. If I can find it. Did I take a picture of it? Mm. Okay, what I was looking at was the stuff that he was given at the dentist, the sodium pentothal, and again, this is not medical advice, this is research. It is classified, my phone says, as a barbiturate. When somebody called Children's Services after I was pummeled by my spouse and he was in jail, not only was I recovering and had my ear stitched back on, but I was waiting for somebody to now come while I was cooking dinner, of all times, to tell me if I was a good enough parent to have my two teenage children that nobody had cared up until that point about. And nobody had cared about when I said, hey, me and him aren't getting along. We need a break from each other. Nobody cared enough about them at that point either. Point being, this alleged person with a business card came in and they always do things fast, especially when they don't want you to know what's on the down low, like it's not exactly legal. They had me do a urinalysis for them. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I did. And they told me, wow, you have barbiturates in your system. Do you have a medication for that? I said, I don't even know what a barbiturate is. Oh, well, here's your paper. Here's this. We got to hurry and go to our next one. Oh, there's an emergency we have to get to. That was a part of their spell, you see. Somehow they thought it was me consenting to or telling me it was in my system or telling me they were going to put it in my system, one or the other. Either way, once again, a lot of the things here that are happening now to a lot of us are not free will. And God is not going to put up with that for very long. But you have to say, I'm reclaiming my free will. I am sovereign. Say it out loud. And it physically pushes some of this stuff back. But again, I am a pacifist. I don't do violence. I don't promote it. I don't try to act on it. Like, I have thrown inanimate objects and broke them. People, I guess, think that's scary about me. I don't know why. Like, it's not an everyday thing, and it's not even a once a year thing. But I do it if I'm angry. It has happened in the past. And oddly enough, I was very angry after my head injury, but still not angry enough to do any physical harm to anybody. I just threw my phone and broke a few of them a couple of times there. This part is where Daniel comes in, and that's where I'm going to end the video. So I'm sorry this was so long. You don't have to bite it off in one fell swoop, in one bite. I do contribute commentary. People used to like that about the channels. Now I don't seem to get anyone over here. I don't know why, but I don't know. Maybe I'll make a new channel, one that they can't block if I ever get out of this location. And they better let me, because I don't consent to being kept here anymore. I just don't. I'm not going to allow you all to have fun just by having someone to pick on and torture. I'm like a pet that they don't even, that's how these beings treat humans. We are pets. They think we're pets. Until you assert your free will, they will continue to treat you like a pet. I don't care if you say the Anunnaki are back. I don't care what you say. I don't care if you say it's because of all the stories that have been written and we think these things are back. Something has obviously happened to reality as a whole and to people as a whole, because the compassion has gone way down, the apathy has gone way up. And there's two sides to everything, and I mean two contradicting sides. Some people say there's rioting everywhere in California. You have other people saying they're in LA, walking around with their cameras, and there's nothing going on in LA. So which one is lying? How are you supposed to know? And this is why I say, don't worry about world events, guys. Not world, why? If it doesn't affect you, yes, you pray for people, but if it doesn't affect you, don't get unnecessarily emotionally involved, because 9 times out of 10 there's some type of deception going on anyway. Either it already happened, it's not going to happen, it's fake, it's not a real person, it's a character they made up to fill the news. Like, these things happen. All right, so here's where the book of Daniel comes into this. Now, this is a dream that he had, and he wanted to put it in his book, allegedly. The countryside, brown and dry in summer, where he had lived as a child. He rode a horse, and approaching him on his left, a squad of horses nearing slowly. On the horses rode men in shining robes, each a different color. Each wore a pointed helmet that sparkled in the sunlight. The slow, solemn knights passed him, and as they traveled by, he made out the face of one, an ancient marble face, a terribly old man with rippling cascades of white beard. What a strong nose he had, what noble features. So tired, so serious, so far beyond ordinary men. Evidently, he was a king. Felix Buckman let them pass. He did not speak to them, and they said nothing to him. Together they all moved toward the house from which they had come. A man had sealed himself up inside the house, a man alone, Jason Taverner. In the silence and darkness, without windows, by himself from now on into eternity. Sitting, merely existing, inert, Felix Buckman continued on, out into the open countryside. And then he heard from behind him one dreadful single shriek. They had killed Taverner, and seeing them enter, sensing them in the shadows around him, knowing that they intended to do with him, Taverner had shrieked. Within himself, Felix Buckman felt absolute and utter desolate grief, but in the dream he did not go back nor look back. There was nothing that could be done. No one could have stopped a posse of varicolored men in robes. They could not have been said no to. Anyhow, it was over. Taverner was dead. This passage probably does not suggest any particular thing to you except a law posse exacting judgment on some either guilty or considered guilty. It is not clear whether Taverner has in fact committed some crime or is merely believed to have committed some crime. I had the impression that he was guilty, but that it was a tragedy that he had to be killed, a terrible, sad tragedy. In this novel, this dream causes Felix Buckman to begin to cry, and therefore he seeks out the black man at the all night gas station. Months afterward, the novel was published. I found the section in the Bible to which this dream refers. It is Daniel 7:9. Thrones were set in places, and one ancient in years took his seat. His robe was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the cleanest wool. Flames of fire were his throne, and its wheels blazing fire. A flowing river of fire streamed out before him. Thousands upon thousands served him, and myriads upon myriads attended his presence. The court sat, and the book were opened. The white old man appears again in Revelation 1:13. I saw one like a son of man, robed down to his feet with a golden girdle around his breast. The hair of his head was white as snow, white wool, and his eyes flamed like fire. His feet gleamed like burnished brass refined in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. And then 117. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. But he laid his right hand upon me and said, Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. For I was dead, and now I am alive forevermore. And I hold the keys of death's domain. Write down, therefore, what you have seen, what is now, and what will be hereafter. And like John of Patmos, I faithfully wrote down what I saw and put in my novel. And it was true, although at the time I did not know who was meant by this description. He made out the face of one, an ancient marble face, a terribly old man with rippling cascades of white beard. What a strong nose he had, what noble features, so tired, so serious, so far beyond ordinary men. Evidently he was a king. Indeed, he was a king. He is Christ himself returned to pass judgment. And this is what he does in my novel. He passes judgment on the man sealed up in darkness. The man sealed up in darkness must be the prince of evil, the force of darkness. Call it whatever you wish, its time had come. It was judged and condemned. Felix Buckman could weep at the sadness of it, but he knew that the verdict could not be disputed. And so he rode on without turning or looking back, hearing only the shriek of fear and defeat, the cry of evil destroyed. So my novel contained material from other parts of the Bible as well as the sections from Acts deciphered. My novel tells a quite different story from the surface story, which we need go into here. The real story is simply this: the return of Christ, now king rather than suffering servant, judge rather than victim of unfair judgment. Everything is reversed. The core message of my novel, without my knowing it, was a warning to the powerful. You will shortly be judged and condemned. Who specifically did it refer to? Well, I can't really say, or rather, I would prefer not to say. I have no certain knowledge, only an intuition. When all this happened, Nixon was our president, or sort of, and he was going through impeachment at this time. And that's who he believes he was getting a premonition about was going to receive judgment. I know there's only 3 pages left, but this video is super long, so I'm going to end it here. We're going to do more on Philip K. Dick. I have a few things already pulled up. You guys have a blessed day. I will talk to you soon. Please go out and be a blessing, not a burden, and use your words carefully. I love you. God bless you.